Now, yesterday, conservative American political activist Charlie Kirk was shot and killed while speaking at a college event in Utah. Now, the killing has prompted condemnations of political violence from across the political spectrum. Kirk himself was known for his controversial opinions, including saying that the American Civil Rights Act was a mistake and that abortion is never medically necessary. And joining us today to talk about him is Angelo Isidorou. Angelo is the executive director of the Conservative Party of B.C. Angelo, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
What went through your mind yesterday when you heard the news?
Shock and horror. You know, we live in this time now where everything is in 4K and everything is accessible. And of course, my phone blows up and I go on Twitter and you see these horrifying images that you can't get out of your head. And I just think about his kids and his wife who were there. You know, this was a 31-year-old man. He's only 3 years older than me. To lose his life in front of 1,000 people and for the world to see after such a successful career and such a major impact on the movement is just, it's heartbreaking.
And he was only 31 years old. I mean, what impact do you think he had on the conservative movement in the U.S.?
Well, when he was 18 years old, he founded an organization called Turning Point USA that went on to become the largest student-led organization in the United States. It had a very significant impact. What he would do is go campus to campus and basically set up and sort of do a prove me wrong open-style debate with students and film it and would go viral, and it just kept growing and growing. Beyond that, he played a significant role in campaigns. You know, I managed the previous provincial campaign here in BC, and I know fully well volunteers are the lifeblood of a campaign, and he built an army of young volunteers for the Republicans. He had a massive impact in Pennsylvania and Michigan, in Arizona, these states that matter. So this was a behemoth in the conservative movement that was lost, and you can tell just by where he was. A Utah campus where he's sitting, you know, in a tent surrounded by 1,000 people who are there just to listen to him speak. So there is power in that. And what really gets me about this is that the basis of our Western civilization is the ability to debate openly and not kill each other. And the moment we cross this line, I worry about where it goes.
Tell me more about that.
Well, look, we look at history and we look at where we've come. I really worry that gone are the days of you're a liberal, I'm a conservative, we're going to disagree on policy, on tax policy, and we're going to go our separate ways. Now we've crossed into this line, and we can see it from some of the rhetoric here of people either celebrating his death or looking at his death as a form of martyrdom for retaliation. You know, I worry about the effects this has on young people. I worry about the effect it has on just conservatives in general and liberals who, you know, are tempted to one side, the tribalistic rhetoric that we have and live in. I just, again, the basis of how we found our society is I can come in here and we can talk and we can agree to disagree and we can shake hands and go our separate ways, and the world still keeps spinning and the you know, our society keeps working and we find a compromise. The moment bullets fly, I don't know how you put that toothpaste back in the tube.
Wow. Now, what about for you personally, Angela? I mean, you were involved in campus politics yourself with the UBC Free Speech Club. You helped organize events with Ben Shapiro. Ben Shapiro was a peer of Charlie Kirk. There were other controversial right-wing figures that were involved in your world. What impact did he have on your own approach to politics?
Well, there's an inspiring element in the sense that Turning Point USA never came to Canada, but it sort of inspired other organizations to get set up. Like we set up a free speech club. The impetus for all of this for people to understand is that there's a generation of conservatives, of young conservatives, who felt, you know, at the time and still to some degree feel as though they're not permitted to share their opinions in public, especially on college campuses. So you have these groups that get together that want to get together to debate, that want to get together to host speakers. And really what he did is sort of light the match for that fuse to really inspire young conservatives to get involved instead of sort of just disengaging from politics altogether. So it played a massive role. It played a massive role in why I'm in the career I am in now, is the ability and the feeling of, yes, I do have a voice. Hey, we may not see eye to eye, but I have a voice and that has value.
Well, it's interesting you sort of use this image of lighting the match because I think about some of the incendiary comments that he put out there as well. I mean, including he was asked about the victims of school shootings. Just listen to what his answer was.
I think it's worth to have a cost of, unfortunately, some gun deaths every single year so that we can have the Second Amendment to protect our other God-given rights. That is a prudent deal. It is rational. Nobody talks like this. They live in a complete alternate universe.
It's chilling to hear that right now. Again, that was Charlie Kirk. What do you make of that comment?
Look, I look at it from the perspective of if he were here right now and could speak, given what happened, would he still say that? I actually think he would. Like, he was an individual that was very much set in his ways and how he thought. And obviously, look, there are Americans who take the Second Amendment very seriously. It's a different culture from us, evidently. But I just, the part I don't like is the fact that, I mean, that clip is now circulating around online, and it's being used as sort of this cudgel to say, hey, maybe this guy deserved it because of his comments. And I just, again, we're so online and so much of what we say is out there and none of it is perfect. And to say that someone deserved to get brutally murdered in front of his family because he believed what he believed is just wrong to me.
Here's another quote, though, from a conference a few years ago. He said, "We made a huge mistake when we passed the Civil Rights Act in the 1960s. He posted online that the Great Replacement theory is a reality. That is a widely debunked idea that undocumented immigrants are coming to the U.S. to replace white Americans. But when you hear those, again, incendiary comments, how do statements like that affect our overall civil discourse in the U.S. and here?
I think the best way to beat bad ideas is sunlight. I think the best way to defeat bad ideas, and I don't agree with those ideas, but if the supposition is, look, these are incendiary statements, they're not true, the best way to counter that is an open debate. The worst way to counter that is by murdering the person saying it. You turn them into a martyr and you radicalize more people. I think that, his statements, be them what they may, they need to be countered in a way, and they should have been countered in a way that was more prudent and that was open to debate and that was persuasive to young people who are impressionable. This is the wrong way to go about it.
But when you talk about free speech, where do you draw the line?
I think incitement. I think clear incitement. I think our laws in Canada, for the most part, cover it in the sense of you can't go out in the street and say we should go and target this group of people with violence, right? I think there are lines to free speech, obviously. But I think if someone is on a college campus or at the Oxford Union, like he did, and wants to discuss nuanced ideas that may or may not be controversial, they should be entitled to do so as long as they fall within what is acceptable in the law.
Really? Do you see Charlie Kirk's influence spill over into Canadian politics as well? I mean, even for someone like yourself in your world.
I think he was very much an American commentator. He never really visited Canada, as far as I can tell, compared to, let's say, a Jordan Peterson who was Canadian. Or other speakers, he didn't really, he was very much focused on that American Constitution that does seem very foreign to us at times. Like, I don't know if he specifically spills over in Canada. I think that the notion of what he was trying to do instead of having conversations in the underground, instead of having debates, in the shadows underground, he wanted them out in the sunlight. And I think some of that has spilled over. And I think a lot of it, frankly, is necessary, because these ideas are floating around, and the best way to counter them is to engage them. And, if they're wrong, disprove them.
It's been interesting just to see the reaction from Trump, from the Republicans overall. How would you compare the reaction to this killing to the coverage of the death of Minnesota Democrat Melissa Hortman, her husband? I mean, they were killed in June in what was described as well as a politically motivated assassination. That's how this has been described as well. The treatment is very different.
Well, Charlie Kirk, as far as I know, was close to the president deeply. My understanding is J.D. Vance, who's the vice president, was actually extremely close to him. They were very good friends. I mean, look, we live in a politically divided time. You have a conservative, right-leaning president and an administration that very much is aligned with Charlie Kirk and probably even relied on Charlie Kirk to get there. So, there's going to be biases. I think that we ought to condemn political violence on all sides. And if anything, it behooves us, because if we only condemn it on one side, it only angers the other and it festers and it gets worse. I worry about what happens now. As horrifying as this was yesterday to watch, and I can't get the image out of my head, where does this go now? I read today that American congressmen are pushing for more funding for security because, outside of the President of the United States, they're not protected in any way, and everyone has access to weapons, and there's a lot of mentally unwell people out there. So, what does it do for that country, and how does it affect us? That's something I don't know.
Well, anybody who's got a speaking engagement and is speaking on a political issue from now on.
Yeah, absolutely, right? I mean, I've stood on stage with Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro. I've gone to these political engagements. I've hosted some of them. And I think that's why, it struck me personally, because, it could have been anyone, right? We put a lot of stock into these shooters and we think, well, geez, they must be this sophisticated political assassin. These are just mentally really unwell people. And I really think it could have been anyone. It could have been that they just chose him that day, right? We don't know. It's a fluid situation. But I think any political engagement now, be it in Utah, be it in New York City, or be it here in British Columbia, we just don't live in the world we thought we live.
What would it take to calm the chaos?
Something that I enjoy watching, there's this program online called Jubilee, where what they do is they get a bunch of people in a room who have radically different ideas, and they make them sit down together and they make them explain their ideas and they make them find common ground. I really think the value of that is understated. I think the value of that is so immeasurably valuable because it shows to that young, impressionable person, hey, I'm actually beginning to realize the other side is human. And we're actually all human beings. And it turns out it's not black and white. The world's a little more complicated, right? I've learned that myself. The world is not black and white. It's gray. And I think that has a lot of value, right? We could talk about different policies that need to be passed, but I think on a human level, when an individual is so willing to get in their car and go and lay on a roof and murder another person in an assassination, that shows a deep, deep wound in the human soul in our society. And I think that, we need to realize we are all human beings. No matter how much you disagree with someone, we need to be able to say, you know what, that is your right to believe what you believe. I believe what I believe, and we're not going to murder each other.